In the name of God, hello everybody. This is session 11 of your morphology lesson. As you know, the last session I started chapter 4 about derivation and the lexicon. First, I talked about the Saussurean sign and introduced some terms like signifier, signified, which are related to this sign system. And I said we have two kind of signs, motivated signs and unmotivated signs. And then we talk about the relationship between motivation and compositionality, and I said that when the word is compositional, it is a kind of motivated sign. And then I talked about two criteria which are related to, the lexicon and the motivated sign, compounding and zero derivation. And you see we have two kind of compounding, endocentric and exocentric compounding, which are related to the to the identifying the stem of the compound. And then and the zero derivation, which I talk about it, the zero derivation is when we change the category of the word without changing the phonological shape. It's a kind of zero derivation. So in this session, I want to continue this, relationship between, the derivation and the lexicon. The other term which I want to introduce is affixation. So we can say that the next type of derivational process we consider here is affixation. We have already looked at a number of affixes, so in this section we focus on a few particular affixes, the types of stems they attach to, and the words they produce. We also build on the discussion of primary and secondary affixes by exploring other restrictions and combinations of affixes. Recall from the section 1-2 that affixation may involve prefixes. We have three kind of, or maybe four kind of affixes: prefixes, suffixes, infixes, and perhaps circumfixes. Since our primary focus in this section is on English, we deal only with the first two types, prefixes and suffixes just. Although, as you can see in the following box, you see this box, English does have a productive infixing processes that incorporates swear words, like swear words. So look at this example. These are the prefixes. On, do. You see here we add prefix on to the word do. Cyber, diater, you see here. Chemisphere, you see here. Roughage, these are example. These three are the examples of prefixes, and these are the suffixes. Roughage, arachnophobia, cutie, you see here. Then these are infixes, which English speakers may use them in swear words. For example, fan fucking tastic, or absolutely, you see here. And we have some circumfixes in other languages other than English, like Kwajrajula. We have some forms of circumfixes. So these are the examples of affixation, which includes prefixes, suffixes, infixes, and circumfixes, as you see here. So we can characterize the stem an affix attaches to as a bound or free. Okay, we have two kind of stem, as you see here: bound stem and free stem, and as belong to a particular lexical category. Look at the following words from the via prefixation with re. You see here, reignite. You see here, reanalyze, reboot, recertify, reread, rebuild. You see here, re attached to stems belonging to the lexical category verb. Okay, it produces words that are also verbs. All of the stems to which it attaches in the preceding examples are free. I mean, ignite is free, boot, read, analyze, certify, and build are all of them stand alone. They do not need to bear a prefix or suffix. The same cannot said for all stems that seem to bear the prefix re based on their meaning. The following words, you see here, are all formed with re, which imparts a sense of repetition or doing again. Yet the stems are unable to stand as their own. They are bound. You see here, repeat, resuscitate, and recognize. You see here, they are, for example, if we omit the re part, the prefix part, what remains is pit, and this pit is not a, stem, and so it's a kind of bound stem, or suscitate, or cognize. You see here, so these are bound stems. Look at this exercise. What is the lexical stem of each the following words? Is the lexical stem bound or free? You see, bookish. If we delete this part, the suffix ish, the book remains. So book is a kind of free stem. So this is free. Notable, again, note, if we omit able, note is a kind of free stem. Unfathomable, again, it's a kind of free. Monstrous, if we omit ous, maybe this kind of word which remains is a kind of bound stem. Comfy, again, is a kind of bound. Generalization, free. Inky, free. And archaism is a kind of bound stem. So you can read it again and recognize the stem, the free stem or bound stem. Sometimes an affix may attach to stems of more than one category. One such affix is ish, ish, you see here. It may attach to nouns like prudish, bookish, girlish, childish, you see, they attach to their noun. Adjectives like oldish, smallish, or verbs like ticklish. In each case, the resulting form is an adjective. So sometimes as affix, maybe an affix attached to stems of more than one category. Noun, verb, adjective, and some other categories. So far we have mentioned stem type, bound and free, and lexical category as two factors that can constrain affixation. Another type of restriction we find is on the combination of affixes. Aronoff and some other linguists observe that many English speakers cannot, for example, say dressing less, though both ing and less are secondary suffixes and the word has a logical meaning. Dressing less salad, for example, we do not use this expression, dressing less salad. The perceived ungrammaticality of dressing less by those speakers can be related to the fact that the combination ing less in English is vanishingly rare. Just in some rare words like meaningless, it's correct. Okay, in German, Aronoff and other linguists observe another type of restriction on affixation. Look at this example. You see here in German, for example, this Germanic word leher, for example, we can add er to it. Leherer, it means teacher, and leherer aft, like a teacher, and then we can add another suffix, leherer aftig kate, teacher's likeness, the other word adding to it. We have a complex noun here, you see here. So Significantly, this word, I mean this last word which we produce, Germanic word, cannot undergo further derivational affixation. In fact, no noun in this, I mean this noun, Kate, you see it's a Germanic word, can. Uh, Aronoff call it a closing suffix. We call it a closing suffix because after that we cannot add another suffix to it. So we call it closing suffix because it closes the word, okay? The existence of closing suffixes in German means that affixation in that language can never be as recursive as German compounding, which can go on just like in English. So these are the affixation, and this definition is related to closing suffix as you see here. So this is the affixation, which includes prefix, suffix, maybe infix, and circumfix, as you see the examples from English language and some other languages. The other part which I want to talk about is about the other derivational processes. We talk about compounding, zero derivation, and affixation, and here I want to talk about other derivational processes. The first one which I want to introduce you is blending. So far we have looked at, as I said, compounding, zero derivation, and affixation. So what are other examples of derivational process? The first one is blending. Blending is a common derivational process in English. Blends, also called portmanteau, you see here, words, are formed by combining parts of more than one word. Speakers may be aware that a word has been formed via blending, as for example, we have some examples here. Look at the example for smog. It consists of two words, smoke and fog. Channel, it consists of two words, channel and tunnel. And chuckle and snort. Chortle, you see a bit, binary digit. You see here, these are a kind of blending because we blend some part of this word, the first word, and some part of the second word. Maybe the first part of the first word and the last part of the second word. We produce a kind of word, we call it blending or portmanteau. Smog, you see here the examples. So neither blending nor any of the other derivational processes we have been talking about is limited to English, of course. While blends are rare or absent in many Indo-European languages, they are common in Hebrew, examples of which are given, some examples, and also Japanese. You have some examples from Japanese or Hebrew languages in your book. You can see these examples. So blending is an example of creative language use. It generally does not adhere to strict constraints, as does affixation. For example, we note in the previous example that bit comes from binary digit. Nothing in the grammar would have prevented speakers from coining the word, for example, beneath from the same part. The word formation processes discussed below, including acronym formation, clipping, folk etymology, and back formation, are treated by linguists separately from productive derivational or lexeme formation phenomena. So this is the definition of blending. As you see, we blend some parts of the first word with the second word and produce a kind of word. The other part, process which is related to the combination of, the lexeme formation and the about the derivational process is acronym. What is acronym? Acronyms are formed by taking the initial letters of a string of words and combining them to form a new word. So we select the initial, letters of the word and combine them to produce a new word. We call this process acronym. In linguistics, speech is generally considered primary and writing secondary. And because acronym formation is dependent on orthography rather than, pronunciation, many would consider it to be external to the general phenomena of lexeme formation, or at the very least, a special case of, lexeme formation that we would expect to find only among literate users of a language, because it relates to, to writing, not to speaking. So maybe some people thinks that it is just related to literate users, not other people. Look at the examples. So if you question our statements that accurate information is orthographically based, just for example, you say some words like NATO followed by North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the pronunciation of A and O reflects the name of the letters, not the initial sound of the words. So speakers may be aware or unaware that a particular form originated as an acronym. How many acronyms on the left would you have been able to break down into their parts on the right? You see the example, for example, scuba, self-contained underwater breathing apparatus. You see the first word of this one, S, combined with C, you see here, then U, you see here, then B, and then A, scuba. Radar, radio detecting and ranging, you see here again, A, these two words, then D, then A, then R. Or NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, you see here, or AIDS, or FBI, you see here. FBI, you see here how I pronounce this one, FBA. FBA differs from the other acronyms in this example in being pronounced letter by letter rather than as a word, FBI, while it is still an acronym. Some people prefer to call it an abbreviation or alphabetism for this reason. We have some other examples from other languages like French. You can see them in your book and read them. A characteristics of acronym in some languages is that they can serve as the base for further morphological operations, particularly affixation. Look at this. No, we do not have example here. So maybe some acronyms, after some acronyms we can add some kind of affixation, for example suffix or prefixes. We have some example from French language. You can see them in your book. So this is the definition of acronym. As you see here, acronym is when we choose the first letters of the words and combine them to each other to produce a new word. We can pronounce it like a word, or we can pronounce it letter by letter like this one, FBA. We call it abbreviation or alphabetism, as you see here. So this is the second process. The first one is I call it blending, and the second one acronym. The third one, the third process of derivational process, which I want to talk about it in this session, is about clipping. You see here, clipping is the creation of a new word by truncation of an existing one. Okay, many nicknames are formed via this process. For example, we call Robert Rob, Patricia Trish, Susan Sue. You see here, this is a kind of clipping. Okay, we call it clipping. Other nouns may also be formed via clipping. For example, advertisement, we call it ad. Fanatic, we call it fan. Co-educational, co-ed. You see here, these are examples of clipping. So in clipping is a kind of creation of a new word by truncation of an existing. We shortened the existing word Robert to Rob. We call it clipping, and we use this process in many languages to produce new words. So this is another process of derivational process. This is a clipping, shortening the word. We call it clipping, and by clipping we can produce many new words in many languages. The other one, this is the third one of the process of derivational process for producing new word. The fourth one is folk etymology. What is folk etymology? Some words are formed via folk etymology. This happens when speakers reinterpret a form, typically a borrowing form, from another language on the basis of word or morphemes that already exist in the language. Examples of folk etymologies are given in this example, as you see, number 20. Cockroach, for example. This is a kind of Spanish word. We get it from Spanish word cucaracha, for example. So we borrow it in English language and pronounce it cockroach. You see here. Or woodchuck, again, it's a pre-existing form. We borrow it from another language and pronounce it like the pronunciation of the English words woodchuck. Or witch hazel, you see here, again, it's a kind of borrowing word. So folk etymology is when the speaker reinterpret a form, typically a borrowing from another language, on the basis of words or morphemes that already exist in the language, because we want to pronounce it correctly according to our phonological criteria and rules. So folk etymology is a historical process of reanalysis. We include it here because it is a source of words, but it is not a true derivational process, because it produces a kind of new word. So we put it in this part of the book as the derivational process for producing a new word, a new lexicon. So we call it folk etymology, which is based on more on the borrowing words and reanalyze that word according to the phonological rule of our language, so we can produce it and pronounce it correctly. So this is a folk etymology, as you see here. I think the last process of derivational processes is back formation, which I want to talk about it here. What is back formation? Back formation is the creation of a word by removing what appears to be an affix. Like folk etymology, it is an example of historical reanalysis and not a productive derivational process. It is responsible for the occurrence of words such as surveil, for example, from surveillance, or liposucked from liposuction. Some very familiar words were originally derived by back formation. Pedal and edit, postate, peddler and editor, although the uninitiated might guess that it was the other way around. Historically, cherry comes from Old Norman French cherise, minus the S, which English speakers took for the plural affix. And the other example you can see from the book. So back formation is creation of a word by removing the affixes. For example, we have surveillance, we remove the AENC, the suffix, and we produce surveil. Or we have liposuction, we remove TION, the shen of the suffix, and we produce liposuck. This is a new word. and again the peddler or the pedal and edit. From the peddler and editor, we remove the er or or to produce the new word. But sometimes when we remove the suffix or prefix, there are some mistakes. For example, cherries, it's a French word, old Noma French word, cherries. This s belongs to the word, but when English speaker borrow this word, he or she thinks that this s introduce the plural form, so cut it and pronounce it cherry. We call it wrong cutting, because I mean wrong. We cut the some part of the stem, so we call it wrong cutting. This is a kind of again process of producing a new word, which we call it back formation. You have some examples from this column. Look at the column. The words in column B were derived from the forms in column A. Identifying, this is an exercise, you can identify the process of word formation here. For example, garage sale, we can produce garage sale. This is a kind of compounding. If I ask you about the derivational processes and word formation, you can name some of these processes here. This is a kind of compounding. Refuse nick, again it's a kind of, nick is a kind of affixation, we call it affixation. Or this car, promenade, you see prom, this is a kind of clipping, we shorten the word. Babysitter, babysit, this is a kind of back formation because we omit er here. Blanket, blanket, you see just we change the category of the word, so this we call it zero derivation or conversion. Cheese and hot dog, cheese dog, we call it blending because we blend two words together. Asparagus, sparrowgrass, this is a kind of folk etymology. Underestimate, again you see here it's a kind of affixation. Photo opportunity, photo op, it's a kind of clipping, as you see. Chocolate, alcoholic, chocolate, it's a kind of blending. And the last one, mothers against drunk driving, mad, it's a kind of acronym because we choose the first word, the first letter of each word and produce a new word, so we call it acronym. So again, you can read these processes, the previous processes: compounding, zero derivation, affixation, blending, clipping, acronym, folk etymology, and some other processes which related to derivational processes for producing new words. Then you read this exercise again. If I ask you about these processes in your final exam, you can tell me about the process according to the material which I talked about them here in this session. Okay, I think that's enough for today. You can read the material in your book again. You can hear the voice again, and if you have any question, you can ask me. Thank you everybody, and goodbye.